All right, here we are for the Vintage 8 20K Q&A. Thank you to everybody who's helped this channel get this far. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys continue to find content on this channel that you enjoy. Anyway, this will be part 1 of the Q&A. This will probably be separated to 2 or 3 parts, depending on how it goes. And if I missed your questions or anything like that at the end of the 3rd one, send me a message and I'll try to answer that question for you. Anyway, off to the first one. All right, so the first 2. What's the meaning behind the name Vintage 8? Also, why pick the name Vintage 8? So I started the name Vintage 8 because I used to be obsessed with 8mm. I was gonna shoot 8mm movies and documentaries and post them on this channel. I never got around to shooting a single one, so this channel remained dead for over a decade until I discovered analog horror. And there you go. That's why it's called Vintage 8. Have you ever considered really putting your work on other platforms? Additionally, would you work on writing, directing a horror movie or a show for a company? Not going to say go professional because I do think this counts as professional. I've actually directed 2 feature films. You can find both of them on Tubi. One of them's called Sacrilege, the other's called The Thing Inside of Us. I have a couple of YouTube channels that are dedicated to different things. I have one that features local work that I've done in Southeast Louisiana. I'll post a link to that. I have another one that shows the documentaries that I've done. Some of the documentaries I've actually turned into analog horrors. I'll put a link to that. I also have a Vimeo page. I'll put a link to that if you guys are interested in that, where I've done other types of works and documentaries. I'm also writing a comic book that I hope to see out this year. I'm writing a 2nd comic book if that goes well. I'm hoping to get that out there. A lot of things. How was your day? My day is great. As of recording this, today is great. Considering the followers of the Eye apparently were the ones responsible for the stuff that happened in the Mr. Burlington videos, why is their symbol different? Did you just decide to make a different design, but then decide the old one looked better? So the design of the eye changes depending on the status of the follower of the eye. The less eyes in the symbol, the less their rank. The more eyes you see in the logo, the higher their rank. Hey man, I really love your work. So my question is, can I help somehow? Watching and sharing helps. Buying merch helps. Anything you buy from a t-shirt, that helps. Every now and again, I post a need for talent. If the role is right and you're over 18, I'll ask for a tape and we'll see what happens. I hope you're having a good day, Vintage 8. Why do your videos sometimes feel modern? It's not a bad thing, but I'd like to know the reasoning behind that. I like jumping around the time periods. It's important to me that things don't look the same or get stagnant. New time periods offer different styles, opportunities. I like a chance to attack stories from different angles. That's the main reason why. I don't want to be just limited to the analog period of the 80s and 90s. I like digital horror. I also like traditional narrative horror. I like all kinds of different stuff. I like experimental stuff. I use the different time periods so that I can choose different styles depending on the different stories. Again, don't know if you saw mine, but for the live action sequence, do you or an associate record those, or are they stock footage? Also, is this a solo project, or do you have people you work with to make this content? If you can only answer one of my questions, please answer the first. Thanks. So this is mostly a solo effort. The stock footage, a lot of the stock footage you see is stuff that I've shot over the years. But I do also use stock footage depending on the need. Even though I'm pretty new to your channel, I love your videos so much and I'm happy you're almost to 20K. You have my subscription for sure. Thank you so much. 2 questions for you. Is this channel a group or single person endeavor? As I said in the other question, yes, this is a single person endeavor mostly. I, of course, do get help from talent. Chad from Mr. Burlington was a big help with the location and getting that done. My wife helps me with some of the productions. So Mostly a one-person effort, but depending on the project, I might pull in some help now and again. And the all-important question, cats or dogs? Both, I like both. Thanks so much for reading, sending you only the best wishes and vibes. P.S. Don't forget to always boil your water and be ready to go analog. Absolutely. Who helps you out with the videos, if anyone? Like I said, mostly me, but I do get help, like I said, from my wife, from, whoever's on that particular production. In The Swarm, I got lots of help from a lot of different creators. That was the first time that I attempted that. It was very successful, and I do believe I'll use some of those guys again, and I'm really appreciative of them lending their voices to helping me with those projects. Knight, what programs do you use for editing? I'm interested in analog horror content and making some of my own. I've got some good video editors, but I'm still struggling to find good audio editors. Any tip? Sending you, I see, kind of boring, but what do you use to edit? What kind of editing software and other programs do you use to make your videos? I use Adobe Premiere for analog horror. I do also use After Effects when I'm trying to make something that's a little more advanced. For audio, I do use Adobe Premiere. I usually don't export my audio unless it's a big production. I might use Pro Tools for something that's more involved, like Knock Knock or Earworm. But you can do a lot of your own mixing in Premiere. There's a tab at the top. You'll see Learning, Assembly, Editing, Color. There's an Audio tab. Click the Audio tab, and it basically makes audio mixing a lot easier, where you can get very good results just on your editor. What are the funny numbers on your credit card? I could tell you, but they would only work in Kate's Crossing. Why I didn't win in Mr. Burlington contest? I have sent an email. Mr. Burlington does what Mr. Burlington does. I can't presume to know Mr. Burlington's wants or wishes. However, I think losing that contest is actually winning that contest. Will you be able to make an analog horror that shows what happens if aliens don't go as planned? I kind of feel like that's what every one of my analog horror shows, is that what goes wrong when aliens interact with humankind. What's your biggest inspirations to the stories you create? So inspiration comes from all over, but I'm always looking for ideas that are just out of the box. If it's an analog, then I'm looking for ideas that can be told in a simple way, that need to be told in that way, that is meant to be told in that way, in other words. I'm a real big believer in, if you're gonna choose the analog horror style, that it needs to be necessary to tell that story from that angle. For example, like Children Under the House, that was the only way that I could have told that story. I know that there could be a big budgeted version of that story where we see the monsters, we see the actors, but for this particular function, using the still pictures, using the story, using the drawings, using a single actor, doing the voiceover, that fit the analog mode. So I'm a big believer in trying to find stories that lend itself to the medium that I'm choosing to create it with, if that makes sense. So if I'm choosing analog, then I want to choose something that makes sense to be told as an analog horror. If I'm telling a story traditionally, then that needs to be the only way in which that story can be told. If it's experimental, likewise, then that's the only way that that particular film can be made. Or at least how I see it. What was your inspiration for the Children Under the House, and I suppose a follow-up? Will there be more Burger Shack related content in the future? I'm a recent but big fan, and I can't wait to see where your art goes. So the inspiration for Children Under the House comes from a story that I heard while doing a documentary for CASA in Louisiana. The story goes that there was this kindly old woman who everyone knew and trusted. However, it was discovered that she would lure kids to her home and traffic them. The story pretty much sprouted from there. However, I've been wanting to tell a ghost story with just children's drawings since film school. I remember my professors telling me that the idea wasn't visually interesting, and at the time they were right. No one would have watched that. However, I'm thankful that the progression of analog horror, internet horror, has evolved to the point of giving me a chance to tell this story in this fashion. I don't know if Burger Shack will show up again as a main part of a story. It's definitely a part of the world. It'll definitely show up in other things from here to there, but will it actually be the center of focus? Only time can tell. What is my favorite color? I don't really have a favorite color, but I do wear a lot of black because that tends to be what we wear when we do production work. Does the SCP Foundation exist in the Vintage 8 universe? I imagine the SCP Foundation has a huge file that is labeled Kate's Crossing and/or Vintage 8. Are you happy in life? Absolutely happy in life. How many squirrels do you own? Alternatively, do the squirrels own you and is keeping that information from the public? The squirrels own me, and I've said too much already. What scares you? Not in an existential crisis kind of way, but more in a monster or darkness, etc. way. Movies like Hereditary scare me. Supernatural stuff gets under my skin for some reason. Why always Tangible Parish? Why not Tangible Parish? Grew up in Tangible Parish, and to me, it's just the perfect place to set a horror movie. When I was growing up, I just always wanted people to see how creepy Tangible could be, and now I finally have that opportunity. Are you from Louisiana? I am from Louisiana. I've always wondered if you lived in the Tangible area. Also, I wanted to ask if you felt weird that I figured out the city Stanley lived in from driving Mr. Burlington video. Sorry for the really personal questions. Here's a less personal one. Are the visual films you have connected to the Tangible universe? I can't wait to see your Q&A. I am not weirded out by that. I wanted people to figure out that Kate's Crossing is also Hammond. I leave little breadcrumbs in all my films that I'm hoping people will take enough interest to put together. I'm very happy that you did so. Yes, every film that's on the Vintage 8 page is connected to the same universe unless otherwise told so. And so far, I have not posted anything that isn't connected to the Kate's Crossing Vintage 8 universe. Is Oracle aware of Prophet and his wacky cult misadventures? He's probably not, to be honest. Up until the hard drives were discovered in 2022-23, no one knew what happened on that particular experiment. Those hard drives in Oracle or Prophet was not connected to any outside circuitry. He was not connected to the internet. He got his information from the eye. So, although Prophet is aware of Oracle, Oracle is not aware of Prophet. All right, hopefully I'll be able to get another one of these Q&As out next week, or maybe even sooner if my schedule allows. Right now I'm pretty busy working on a couple other things, so hopefully I can get back and get this Q&A done. I'm also trying to write the next analog horror, which I'm happy to announce here is going to be called It Lives in the Static. And if you can think Little Shop of Horrors meets analog horror meets an old TV, then you might be in the ballpark of what this is going to be.